Hello everyone, welcome back to another SUPboarder video. My name's Will, and this time we're going to continue to look at one of the fastest growing disciplines and interest areas in paddleboarding today, SUP, touring and exploring. In part 2 of this how-to series, we're going to guide you through the steps of becoming a SUP tourer and explorer. Part 1, we looked at what is SUP touring and exploring and how you can get involved. In this part, we're going to be talking you through planning your SUP touring adventure, helping you understand choosing your locations, weather conditions, looking at safety considerations, as well as potentially selecting overnight locations. All of this should help you get ready for SUP touring for the very first time. So, to go SUP touring, you obviously need to go somewhere, and therefore you need to think about how far you might be able to go to fit the time you have available. The best advice I can give here is to be realistic about your own and your paddle buddy's ability. Aim to start with shorter distances and less challenging paddling conditions initially. You need to plan based on the average speed you think you are able to sustain, including breaks, but be realistic. All those stops to take a selfie and refuel take time, and you don't want to be in a situation rushing to get home because you are too confident about how fast you can paddle. You want to spend your day enjoying the environment you're in and going on a real adventure. You or your group's average speed will be affected by the board you are using. Your ability, the water state, water movements such as tide or river flow, and the wind conditions. All of these might change during the day, affecting your overall distance you might be able to travel. As a baseline, it's good to understand the average paddling pace you can achieve when you're out paddling. There's a number of different ways you can do this, such as timing yourself over a set distance, or you can use an activity tracker that you could download onto your smartphone, or use GPS watches. SUPboarder's mobile app tracking product is called SUP. It's specifically designed for paddleboarding, so it tracks data relevant to SUP, such as wind speed and direction. You can also use a tool such as SUP to look at SUP touring other paddlers are doing and see the average speeds they achieved, because the app gives you the ability to see other people's activity as well as your own through the feeds. I often plan my trips around 3 miles an hour or 2.5 if I know I'm going to be having a more relaxed day and stopping more. I've worked that out from looking at all of my SUP paddles in my profile over the last 3 years and kind of getting a feel for how quickly I generally go. Another interesting thing to do is to use the community and feed elements of SUP to see the other routes people are paddling and see how long it took them. You can check out their session information for guidance and even ask the paddlers in SUP to help you plan your time and distance through the messaging functions. You might even find an example of the same route you are planning. All the more information to help you successfully plan your own paddle expedition. Suitable weather conditions will also be really important when you plan your route. Not only will suitable weather conditions allow you to meet your average paddling speed and not be out in the rain and the wind all day, they will also keep you safe. There's plenty of good online tools to help you look at the weather. When planning, we recommend the use of tools such as Magic Seaweed and Wind Guru, particularly for coastal weather, as they link wind, swell and general weather and tides all into one place. If you have a route that you want to do, you can look at the weather conditions alongside it to understand if it's the right time to be doing it on the particular time that you've got available. You can also look at conditions and decide suitable routes to go when you have the available time to do it. A really great way to do that is just linking it up with Google Earth alongside your weather forecasting on your desktop computer. Another useful online tool I like to use is XC-Weather. As well as providing weather and wind forecasts, it can be used for live weather readings. You can check the forecast against actual conditions, which makes it really useful as a tool for just before you head out SUP touring to make sure the forecast has got it right. Just gives you that really good confidence. When planning around the weather conditions, as an initial assessment, consider wind direction and strength, water movements, speeds and direction, as well as general weather conditions for your initial assessment of if it's going to make your route possible. Secondly, and often an oversight, is to look at geographic features that might make those weather conditions and water flow conditions more locally enhanced or reduced. As an example, looking at features such as valleys that might make wind funnel and increase in speed, or features such as high cliffs that can often shelter you from the wind, might make paddling more or less possible in those particular conditions for the day. Doing your planning will prepare you as much as possible for what challenges you might face on your route. But remember, plans change, and you need to be looking at the conditions and altering your plans dynamically as the day's weather unfolds. Don't forget that weather forecasts are forecasts. They're just predictions of what they think might happen, and there's a lot of very local effects that can really change what those weather forecasts actually say. Don't forget to also consider using marine charts and ordnance survey maps to help you plan your route. Different types of map give you lots of different types of information which will help you enjoy your paddle as much as possible and stay safe. Wind conditions are often the biggest limit to paddleboard routes. The ability of yourself or your group's paddling ability will determine where you can go on your planned route for the given weather conditions. It's key to remember that SUP touring will take you somewhere new or around the corner, a bit further than you have before, so you experience different conditions from where you started. You might end up having to paddle into the wind, across the wind, or perhaps downwind. You might experience less stable water conditions. When planning where you're going, think about the what-ifs and how conditions might vary from the familiar, and be realistic about whether your paddling ability is up to it and if it's safe to head out onto your planned route. These unknowns shouldn't discourage you from going SUP touring, but understanding the potential unknowns and thinking about what different conditions to expect will make sure you can successfully and safely stretch your own comfort zone. The next step in your planning should be to consider access points and exit points. It's often actually an oversight, but many waterways have access restrictions, particularly canals, lakes and rivers. And you need to be aware of where you can and can't end your paddle from, as well as you can and can't stop during your route. Firstly, access to water is sometimes restricted to having a permit or a license. Do your research before you set out to ensure that you don't break any rules and upset anybody. There's also areas of private land along many waterways and coastal areas, so be aware of this when you're planning and do a little bit of research to avoid any problems with angry landowners. In other places, geographic features often cause access restrictions, such as high cliffs or high riverbanks, or perhaps surf breaking onto the coast. I learnt the problems of cliffs on a paddle around the Mediterranean island of Ibiza in 2012. We had 12-mile stretches with no exit points to rest. This wasn't a problem because we'd chosen to paddle in calm conditions and we could rest and refuel on our boards. But if you hadn't expected it on your trip, it might come as a surprise and make your day less enjoyable. From a safety point of view, it's really sensible to look at the route and understand the emergency exit points you have available to you if something does go wrong. Therefore, you know where you can get out of the water if you had to. But perhaps just as important is that you'll know the sections of your paddle that you're restricted to staying afloat. This ensures you can plan stops on land with these exit restrictions in mind. After all, no one likes it when you aim to do just one more mile before you stop, to then find out there's nowhere to stop for another 10. Of course, you can't plan for everything, as the resources that you have available to you are not substitute to being on location. But some planning is better than no planning. If you are looking to achieve a longer SUP touring goal, as part of your planning, you can always paddle parts of the route. This will give you valuable insight into what to expect when you attempt linking multiple sections together. If you are planning an overnight SUP touring trip, you need to plan to find suitable camping or accommodation locations. There might be access restrictions and wild camping restrictions, and there may only be limited official campsites on your route. If you are planning on having 4 walls around you when you sleep, you need to make sure that you can get to your planned accommodation in the time that you have, so it can be a little bit less flexible. If you're wild camping, you might need to consider things such as making sure the location will offer you shelter from the weather over the time period that you're going to be there, as well as giving you access to any natural resources such as food, water, and perhaps firewood that you might need during your stay. A bivvy offers you more flexibility to where you can sleep. Less space is needed than the traditional tent. It's not as comfortable, but they do give you the ability to camp up in some much smaller, harder to get to locations and can really add to the adventure. Use Google Earth or its satellite view map, as well as Street View, to scope out your adventure virtually. It's a really brilliant tool that I've used many occasions when I'm planning my SUP touring adventures. Now, one of the things I really like about inflatable paddleboards is they offer you the fantastic opportunity for one-way SUP touring adventures. Perhaps paddling down a river and returning by train or bus is one example. It does need an element of additional planning to make sure that the tides, the weather, and the train times or the bus times work for the day that you're going. And of course, you don't really want to miss that last train home and have an unexpected night away. These one-way trips can be a great way to plan routes when the weather isn't favourable. For instance, to avoid a difficult return paddle into the wind or perhaps tidal flow. If you don't have any inspiration for where to paddle, check out the SUPboarder archives for travelling inspiration as well as touring and exploring. Look for the icons, and there's many years of inspiring SUP adventures there to help. SUPboarder's mobile app GeoSUP is also a really great community-led way to find paddles all over the world or in your local area. When you have planned your SUP touring and exploring route, and prior to leaving, be sure to tell someone your plan. Let them know your destination and estimated arrival time, and then update them when that plan changes. A very sensible thing to do is to perhaps use some of the paid live trackers that you can get, such as Spot On or Strava Live Beacon. We're integrating a safety feature and a live tracker into GeoSUP, so stay tuned for that. The benefit of live trackers is that they allow your safety contacts to see where you are, check in on you, and if there is something wrong, they can raise the alarm. Your route planning will also help you understand the kit you need to take, from board and paddle to safety kit. We're going to look at much more about what you need to take on your SUP touring and exploring adventure next time, so stay tuned for that on SUPboarder. If you haven't already, check out SUPboardermag.com for everything SUP, as well as SUPboarder Pro, our paid subscription that unlocks more videos and features than what you see on YouTube and SUPboardermag.com. If you're serious about your paddleboarding, SUPboarder Pro is an absolute must for you. It helps to ensure SUPboarder is funded by you, the readers, and limits our reliance on advertising and means you get the very best information and advice. If you're already a Pro subscriber, check out the intermediate SUP touring series that's running alongside this series. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on SUPboarder, SUPboarder Pro, and SUPboardermag.com.